please make sure you get in the habit of putting your units. This is degrees. Angle measurements are in degrees. All right, we're gonna set up our other angle measurement, angle N, and I want to use trig functions to solve for the measure of angle N. So now these opposite and adjacent lengths are going to switch up just a little bit. Because now, with respect to angle N, this is now my opposite, and now this is my adjacent legs. So, tangent of the measure of angle N is equal to opposite, 7, divided by adjacent, 15. I need to take the inverse trig function on both sides of the equation. So what's in green ink is just the original left-hand side and right-hand side. My exact answer I'll write in red ink. So my exact answer is the measure of angle N is the inverse tangent of 7/15. The inverse tangent of 7/15. So using our handy dandy calculators. We're going to do second inverse tangent, and then we have now, 7 divided by 15. And we get 25.0. So again, rounding to the nearest, if I ask you to round to the nearest tenth, you must represent that tenth spot. So this is 25.0. If it asks you to round to the nearest tenth, you have to represent that. Any questions about finding angle measurements? No? Okay. Now both of those involved tangent. However, you're going to be using cosine and sine as well. Let's take a gander, all of us together, going back to page 139. Go back to page 139. Looking at number 4. On number 4, I want you to use cosine for both S and R. I want you to determine the measurement of angle S, the measurement of angle R, and for both, I would like for you to use cosine. Because we can use any trig function we want. We have all three sides. That's never going to happen on a quiz or a test, but for this example, you got all three sides, so you can use any trig function. I'm asking you to use cosine. Okay, looking at number 4. Find the measurements of angle S and angle R. Once again, because we have all three sides, we can use any of the trig functions we want. I ask you to use cosine. So We've got cosine. I'm going to first solve for the measure of angle S. Cosine compares adjacent leg divided by hypotenuse. So adjacent leg would be 40. Hypotenuse would be 48. Take the inverse trig function, the inverse cosine in this case, on both sides, and your exact answer is, the measure of angle S is the inverse cosine of 40 divided by 58. Switching perspectives to angle R now, we're still going to use cosine. However, our adjacent and opposite legs, they interchange because we're at a different angle now. So now cosine of the measure of angle R, it's going to be 32 divided by 58. And so my exact answer for the measure of angle R would be inverse cosine of 42 divided by 48. Exact answer. These are my exact answers. Now when we plug these into our calculator, and we're going to round them to the nearest 10. I got inverse cosine of 40 divided by 58. That should have gotten us $46.4. Measure of angle S is 46.4. And then the other one is 43.6. So we've got 46.4. First off, make sure that these answers make sense. Do they truly add up to be 180 degrees? That's always a good way to check your answer. Also, just make sure that it makes sense by the angle measurements and the opposite side lengths. Right now, 40, this is my smallest side length, so it should be opposite the smallest angle measurement, and that is the case. And that's what I mean by making sure that your answer makes sense. All right, cool. Looking at your homework in blue ink, it's also already on the website, but in blue ink over here on the board. You got workbook page 137, 20, and 23. That's just applying trig to solve for like perimeter and area. If you look on page 140, I do want everyone to turn to page 140. On page 140, I don't even know what their instructions say. I don't care. We're scratching those all out. And this is what I'm asking for. I want the angle measurements. So for number 22, I need the angle measurement, the measure of angle B, the measure of angle A. But on number 23, I also, again, need the measurement of angle A and the measurement of angle B. For 22 and 23, on page 140, I need the angle measurements. So we're using inverse trig functions. Use what is printed. I do not want you to find the length of segment BA and use that. Use what's printed to find those angle measurements. Then the last is on page 142. If you look at number 7, number 7 is the type of questions that we've been dealing with, where I give you one angle measurement and one side length, and you've just been using your normal trig functions to find side lengths. Because if you need side lengths, you use the normal trig function, sine, cosine, tangent. However, if you look over at number 9, you don't know either one of those acute angles. You don't know the angle of measure, the angle U's measure, you don't know the angle E's measure. You need to use the inverse trig function. So that's sine inverse, cosine inverse. That means the -1 to solve for U and E. How are you going to get the length of segment UM? Pythagorean's theorem. If you have two side lengths, you use Pythagorean's theorem. And you need to leave those in simplest radical form when you use Pythagorean's theorem. Humbug. There was one thing I needed to say. Man, I hope it comes to me. When you're doing side lengths, yes, I want you to leave it as simplest radical form because you're taking the square root using Pythagorean's theorem. For angle measurements, I'm going to be asking you on quizzes and tests to sometimes round to the nearest whole number. Sometimes I'm going to be asking you to round to the nearest tenth. So mix it up a little bit. Get used to rounding to both. Every single person in this classroom, no matter what we have at home or what's on our cell phone or access to internet at home, whatever, it does not matter. Everybody can get down to the exact answers for all of these missing angle measurements and side lengths. Okay, so do not stress if you don't have access to the scientific calculators with the trig functions. It's okay, I'm going to give you guys some time next class period to come in and type those exact answers in so you can get the rounded ones. But these are the type of questions that are going to end up on your tests, where all I'm going to do is just give you a right triangle and I'm going to say solve it. And what I mean by solving a right triangle is give me all of the side length, give me all the measures of the side length, and then all of the angle measurements as well. You're telling me everything about that right triangle. Any questions about the inverse functions or the homework? Okay, we can start packing up.